Dear Patriots, before the news starts, please subscribe to our patriotic channel by clicking the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up to this video. Don't forget to leave your opinion below in the comments section. Share the news on Facebook and Twitter so you friends see it. Thank you.
Mulvaney nears victory in struggle with Mnuchin on tax rules. The White House is poised to give its budget office greater control over some of the Treasury Department's regulations, handing Budget Director Mick Mulvaney a victory in a months-long power struggle with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, according to three sources familiar with the discussions. The move, which could come in the next few weeks, would end the autonomy the Treasury Department has enjoyed since the 1980s when it comes to issuing tax rules, while giving greater power to one of Trump's favorite cabinet members at the expense of another. The highly sensitive debate has consumed the attention of top officials at both agencies. At stake is the final say over IRS regulations, and the implementation of the Republicans' tax law. In recent weeks, the White House's top attorney, Don Mnuchin, became involved in mediating this tussle, and at one point, Mnuchin even considered personally appealing to the president, according to one Republican close to the White House. Among some regulatory and budget experts, there is a sense that tax laws need more input from agencies outside of Treasury since they often affect billions of dollars. A final and formal decision is expected in the next few weeks. A senior official at the OMB said the office does not discuss ongoing and pre-decisional processes. A Treasury spokesperson said, Treasury and OMB are working constructively together to re-examine the existing review process for tax rules. Meanwhile, downtown lobbyists have been keenly tracking the debate as they seek to influence the outcome of the new tax law. The move raises the possibility that key regulations surrounding the law, especially on the nuances of the international rules and the taxation of certain types of businesses, could be delayed if they must pass through both Treasury and OMB's Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. This is more than just adding a player to the team roster. This is putting an extra person on the court. People will need new playbooks, offensive and defensive, as the tax game is changing, said Sage Eastman, a lobbyist for Melman Castagnetti Rosen and Thomas and former senior counselor to the House Ways and Means Committee under former Chairman Dave Camp. The change is also likely to spark a strong reaction on Capitol Hill, where different Republican factions are pushing for either the OMB or Treasury to have dominance on tax rules. House Ways and Means Chairman Kevin Brady, Republican Texas, has been Treasury's most vocal, public advocate on the Hill, arguing that the agency should keep its exemption on regulation and guidance coming out of the IRS. But a handful of Republican senators and right-leaning regulatory experts have argued that OMB should have more say over these types of regulations and guidance. Brady has declined to answer when asked for his concerns over potential delays, and his counterpart on the other side of the Capitol, Senate Finance Chairman Orrin Hatch, Republican Utah, has also been measured when asked about the changing dynamic. Chairman Hatch is closely watching the development of IRS rules on the new tax law, and is confident that OMB and Treasury will strike the right balance to ensure a transparent regulatory process, said an email from his committee's communications director, Julia Lawless. But other Republicans in Congress have privately grumbled about it, with more than a couple of them questioning the lack of tax experts at OIRA, which would be directly involved in the extra layer of regulatory analysis. Staffers there could be biting off more than they can chew, according to GOP lawmakers who agreed to discuss the issue confidentially to avoid picking a more public fight. The head of OIRA, Naomi Rao, has publicly said the extra scrutiny by her team would add time to the regulatory process, even if, behind closed doors, the OMB has fought to have more control over the process. And in contrast to Treasury rule writers, OIRA isn't known for openly inviting third-party input from the lobbying community and other outsiders. The OMB is good at doing cost-benefit, but they are not good at doing tax. They have no experience whatsoever in tax law, said Mark Mazur, former Assistant Secretary for Tax Policy at Treasury and Director of the nonpartisan Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center. In order to do a good job, they would have to hire 20 tax attorneys, which is what Treasury already does. You are duplicating the assets that you already have. Trump announces temporary memorial to opioid abuse victims. President Donald Trump wrote Tuesday on Twitter that he is very pleased that his administration will host a temporary memorial to victims of opioid abuse next month on the Ellipse just outside the White House. I am very pleased to welcome the opioid memorial to the President's Park in April. I encourage all to visit and remember those who we have lost to this deadly epidemic, Trump wrote on Twitter, linking to a post from the official White House account. We will keep fighting until we defeat the opioid crisis. Trump has put combating opioid abuse at the center of his domestic agenda, traveling to New Hampshire, a state especially hard hit by opioid abuse, earlier this month and announcing a set of administration proposals for combating addiction. Controversially, Trump has suggested imposing the death penalty for certain drug dealers and preventing the flow of drugs into the U.S. with his long-promised wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. Other proposals from the Trump administration include making overdose reversal drugs more readily available, creating a nationwide database to keep track of patients seeking prescriptions for painkillers, and expanding Medicaid coverage for inpatient addiction treatment. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said Tuesday that the exhibit would be open from April 12 to 18 and feature 22,000 pills, each with the face of a prescription drug overdose victim carved into it. The White House, along with the National Park Service, will host the National Safety Council's opioid memorial on the Ellipse in President's Park, she said. These stories are tough to hear, and this exhibit will be an intensely emotional and somber experience. But it's also a reminder that lives are at stake, and we must take action to end the plague of addiction that is ravaging communities all across our nation. Trump predicts Kim will do what is right but keeps sanctions in place ahead of meeting. President Donald Trump on Wednesday predicted that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will do what is right for his people and for humanity, relaying the message that Kim is apparently looking forward to his planned meeting with Trump in the coming weeks. For years and through many administrations, everyone said that peace and the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula was not even a small possibility. Now there is a good chance that Kim Jong-un will do what is right for his people and for humanity. Look forward to our meeting, Trump wrote on Twitter Wednesday morning. The president's tweet about Kim came on the heels of the North Korean leader's visit to China earlier this week, Kim's first trip outside his own country since he took the reins of power from his late father in 2011. Trump wrote online that Chinese President Xi Jinping had given him a readout of Kim's visit to Beijing. Received message last night from 11 Jinping of China that his meeting with Kim Jong-un went very well and that Kim looks forward to his meeting with me, Trump wrote. In the meantime, and unfortunately, maximum sanctions and pressure must be maintained at all cost. That Trump and Kim are planning to meet came as a surprise when it was announced earlier this month at the White House by a visiting South Korean delegation. The announced meeting is to take place by May, although the White House has yet to announce any further details and North Korea has been uncharacteristically quiet about the meeting. Such a meeting would be a dramatic departure not only from decades of past precedent dictating that U.S. presidents not meet with North Korea's ruling Kim family, but also from the rhetoric between Trump and Kim that has dominated the relationship through the U.S. president's first 14 months in office. Since Trump's inauguration, North Korea has ramped up its missile testing program and also tested its most powerful nuclear device to date, prompting the U.S. president to launch what his administration has labeled a maximum pressure campaign to dissuade the Kim regime from its nuclear ambitions. Trump has pointedly refused to remove the threat of military action from the table and threatened last summer that North Korea will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen if it did not stop its threatening behavior. Trump attack unleashes oppo against Mueller. When President Donald Trump lashed out against Robert Mueller by name earlier this month, the president's supporters sprang into action, treating the chief Russia investigator to political campaign-style opposition research. Within hours, the Drudge Report featured a story blaming Mueller, the special counsel leading the Justice Department's Russia probe, for the FBI's clumsy investigation into the 2001 anthrax attacks when Mueller ran the bureau. The independent pro-Trump journalist Sarah Carter posted a story charging that Mueller, as a federal prosecutor in Boston in the mid-1980s, had covered up the FBI's dealings with the mafia informant Whitey Bulger. Carter was soon discussing her findings in prime time with Fox News host Sean Hannity. Meanwhile, Trump supporters on Twitter circulated video of testimony Mueller gave to Congress ahead of the 2003 Iraq War in which he endorsed a view, later proved false, that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction. To some, the barrage looked coordinated among pro-Trump allies and media outlets, a concerted effort to tarnish Mueller's reputation as part of a political strategy to undermine, or even eventually fire, the Russia investigator. It looks like the beginnings of a campaign, a source familiar with Trump's legal strategy said. It looks like they are trying to seed the ground. Ultimately, if the president determines he wants to fire Mueller, he's going to want to make sure there's ample public record that he can fall back on. While Trump has long publicly denounced the Russia probe, and Mueller has been the target of criticism since he first began his work, both Democratic and Republican observers say the latest wave of personal attacks on Mueller seem more barbed, and personal, than ever. Even as they accuse the Justice Department and FBI of anti-Trump bias and unethical tactics, Trump's conservative allies seem increasingly determined to undermine the personal credibility of Mueller, whom a new CNN poll shows has far more public support for his handling of the Russia probe, at 48%, than does the president, at 32%. People close to the Russia probe call it a crucial moment when Trump swiped at Mueller by name for the first time earlier this month. Until then, the president had followed the advice of his lawyers and refrained from mentioning the special counsel and his online tirades about the fake news and witch hunt of the Russia scandal. But 2 Saturdays ago, Trump angrily tweeted that, the Mueller probe should never have been started and that there was no collusion and there was no crime. Why does the Mueller team have 13 hardened Democrats, some big crooked Hillary supporters, and 0 Republicans? He added the next morning. Fueling the fire was a statement from his then personal attorney John Dowd to a Daily Beast reporter saying that the Mueller investigation should be shuttered. Dowd later told Politico he had been speaking only for himself, but that claim met a skeptical reception. Some suggest that, in taking off the gloves, the president was setting a new tone for discourse toward the special counsel at the same time his lawyers are trying to negotiate the terms for an interview with Mueller. This anti-Mueller wave feels different because it is being driven directly by the president, said Kurt Bardella, a former spokesman for Breitbart News and for California GOP Representative Darrell Issa. One longtime Trump ally says what's happening is clear. I think President Trump is going to war. I think it's very obvious he's going to war on this, former Trump White House strategist Stephen Bannon said last week during a Financial Times panel in New York. Jay Sekulow, who is now serving as the president's top personal attorney, declined comment except to say, "We are proceeding with our ongoing cooperation with the Office of Special Counsel." The attacks on Mueller may be starting to pay off. The special counsel's unfavorable rating among Republicans hit a peak of 43% in a morning consult, Politico poll conducted in the days surrounding the president's anti-Mueller tweets. An open question is whether the ensuing wave of anti-Mueller attacks by Trump's allies really is orchestrated, or just a reflexive response. They just activate, Bardella said. They don't need to have a conversation or meeting or a memo. They know once that signal comes they're free to, as Steve Bannon would say, go buck wild. Adam Gingrich, a former Pennsylvania-based Trump campaign operative, joined the fray earlier this month with a tweet declaring it, time to #Rise Up and #Fire Mueller, Gingrich wrote, using hashtags that spread across conservative circles in the following days. On the Drudge Report, a live poll launched after Dowd's comment quizzed visitors on whether Trump should fire the special counsel. After more than a week online, The poll had found 76% in favor of Mueller's ouster. On Fox News, Hannity gave Mueller a thorough drubbing too. During one of his podcasts last week, the conservative pundit questioned why Attorney General Jeff Sessions was recused from the Russia probe while Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein gets to appoint his buddy Robert Mueller. "If it's the last act I do on this earth, I'm getting to the bottom of this," Hannity said. "I'm not going to stop. Unless I have a stroke on the air and can't talk or function, I'm going to keep going." Hannity also devoted television airtime to the special counsel each night last week, including an interview with Carter in which he asked her to elaborate on her story about Mueller's work as a federal prosecutor in Boston and criticism that the FBI had withheld information about its interactions with Bulger, a former organized crime boss and federal government informant who evaded police for 16 years until his 2011 arrest. "We've got to tell the story about Mueller," she said. "We're not hearing all the facts about Robert Mueller. The questions about Mueller's record aren't actually new. As the Senate prepared to consider President Barack Obama's 2011 request for a 2-year extension of his FBI term, Mueller faced criticism over both the Bulger episode and his role overseeing the anthrax attacks, in which the FBI under his leadership pursued the wrong person for several years, and the prime suspect committed suicide just as prosecutors were readying charges. But the complaints didn't stop him from winning unanimous confirmation." Mueller spokesman Peter Carr declined to comment. "There's no question he bears some of the responsibility about what happened on the anthrax case," said Saul Weisenberg, a former deputy to Whitewater independent counsel Ken Starr. "But still, so what? What does that have to do with? You're going to make errors in your career if you're working hard and being aggressive." The onslaught against Mueller has also tested the mood among congressional Republicans. It took a couple of days for House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to weigh in on the president's attacks. And while both came to Mueller's defense, Ryan said he'd gotten assurances the special counsel wouldn't be fired, and McConnell called Mueller an excellent appointment. They stopped well short of rebuking Trump's openly hostile tone. If Trump is trying to determine how far Congress will let him go, the silence becomes very important, said Charlie Sykes, the frequent Trump critic and former conservative radio host from Wisconsin. "They could have shut this down almost immediately by saying this would be absolutely intolerable, this would cross a bright red line." The fact neither McConnell or Ryan is not drawing a red line, he added, is potentially signaling a green light to Trump.